We don't see.
All right. Mixed bag at Belmont Village Story Swap, July 18, 2022. Vicki Ness.
Excuse me. Hi there. This is a news story, so I'm trying it out on y'all. Iris started out every morning clutching her bathrobe, stomping down the driveway to pick up the newspaper. And then she'd bring it back to the kitchen. By the way, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Good, okay. And she would drip her coffee, and then she'd sit at the kitchen table with her coffee and the newspaper. But the newspaper stories were hard things to read. They were stories about deception and evil and greed and terrible politicians stealing from people and doing terrible things, ruining lives. And then there were stories about man-made disasters that left people homeless. And through every one of them, they began to grow like enormous boulders heading right toward her. And her only defense against them was to be really angry, really angry. I knew that was going to happen when he got elected. This is a fait accompli. We knew how this story was going to end, didn't we? Yeah, corporate greed. That's how it all ends. This is the way all these stories end. And her anger certainly kept the boulders of pain and depression away, but it gave her a stomach ache. But it was better than being rolled over by these big stories that just scared the bejesus out of her. Well, one day, she picked up the paper and she was putting it back together and clacking it onto the table, putting it together, and she noticed, wait, letters had fallen off the newspaper. Scraggly leg things, they all fell off, and there they were squirming with each other like the legs of a fly dying on a windowsill. And some of them were crawling off, and some of them were sticking up and looking around, and all these letters, serif sharp-edged letters, all climbing all over each other. Oh my gosh, she thought. And she stood up, and then she grabbed the rest of the paper just by the spine and shook it the way a dog would shake a rag toy. And all the letters from the entire newspaper fell down into a heap, swarmy, sticky, clawing heap of letters, and all the photos sifted down into dust. And she had a blank newspaper. But the letters were starting to creep along the table. Oh, she slapped at them. Oh, she got the trash can and she sweep. Oh, ouch, ouch. Oh, they bit like angry ants. Sweep. Oh, you get, stop. And she got them all into the trash can and tied up the trash bag. Woof! And a little mushroom cloud of dust rose up and settled back down. But inside the bag were all these letters, and the bag was twitching and squirming. She took it out to the outside trash can, dropped it in there, put on the lid, and went back to her table, where she had her coffee, and now she had a blank newspaper. She found she kind of liked that. There were no bad stories in it at all. Look at that blank horizon, not a crummy story to be seen. So this became her hobby. Every morning, she'd get her coffee, she'd get the newspaper, and she'd shake the daylights out of it until all the letters fell down and started twitching and curling around each other and creeping off into all different directions. And she'd get the trash can and sweep, ouch, and sweep all of them into the plastic bag and tie the bag shut. Poof, would come the little mushroom cloud of dust. And the little squirming bag pushing, poking, and out to the trash. And then she could settle down to the news she wanted to see, which was no news at all. It was totally blank, like a beautiful free horizon, end to end, no rotten news anywhere to be seen, just peace, Even the editorial section, nobody showed up with an opinion, even better. Yay! And so she would go on every day this way. Well, the dust eventually started to gather. Mushroom cloud dust began to fall on her table. And it began to gather, and it began to slide and slither. And in some sort of primeval predatory instinct, it began to slither off the edge of the table and fall like a silk scarf and pool up under her chair. And then, as a gray, slithery, singular beast, it slid across the floor to the corner and curled up into the corner and watched her. And every day, the darkness in the corner grew. Every newspaper that she shook the news out and took the letters out till she had a beautiful blank newspaper, the dust would fall and sift down, ease its way across the floor to the corner and watch. And then one day it started to advance up the wall like a spreading stain and came up on the ceiling over her head. And that's when it pounced, but not with fang and claw, but with a very, very fine dust, a gray, filtery dust of anxiety. And it filled her lungs. And it clouded up her eyes so she didn't see very well, and it clogged up her ears, and it sort of made her feel a little claustrophobic, and she had trouble breathing, and her heart beat a little faster. And all of a sudden, her blank paper that used to make her feel so good with its endless horizons, the white paper just felt more and more like the solid walls of solitary confinement. And she felt more and more alone. And the walls seemed to close in and close in until she was entirely alone. And the gray, sticky cobwebs of conspiracy theories started forming in the corners and growing toward her. Well, one morning, just automatically, she put her coffee mug down and put the newspaper down. And she had forgotten to shake the letters out. And when she opened her eyes, there were letters that formed words. Oh, that's right. And words formed sentences, which formed stories. And the miasma in her rose up and zeroed in on those black, sharp, nasty letters. And the stories were still all there. This politician cheating, lying, messing people over, and this natural disaster. But the more she read, the more she also saw that for all of that, there was also this one person who stood up with courage and said the truth when it was not a popular thing to do. And there were these strangers who reached out to people they didn't even know to offer them a place to stay and food to eat after a disaster. And more tiny little seeping stories of courage and compassion and honesty and decency laced throughout every story. And all of a sudden, the stories ceased to look like boulders. They looked more like open windows. And the stories looked less like an endless story that came to a close that everybody knew would end in disaster. Instead, it seemed to her that not only was she not a spectator, but she was a participant. And the end of the story wasn't there yet. It was still being made. And if she just wrote a letter to an editor, or if she just was kind to her neighbor, she was in some way changing the story. And that made it a living, breathing story that involved her. And that was the closest to happily ever after she's ever heard. It needs a little work.
Wow, Vicky, what a story. I think every one of your stories is a treasure, I must tell you. My God. It's so, so real and it's such a beautiful, beautiful ending. And I think that's exactly what all of us need to do. We need to make a difference. I think each of us can do it. It's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Bobby,
Very clever. Clever as usual. Well done. Good gestures. Good voice. No more work.
It's perfect as it is, Vicky.
I couldn't hear everything Bobby said.
I
Joe,
couldn't.
It keeps cutting off, cutting in and off. Up, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that was my fault. I was pushing the key. I said, very well done. It's a complete story, gestures, face. I don't know what more you could do but practice, but it's good. It's really good and clever.
It's so much my reaction to news. It upsets me. And then I think, well, I'm just not going to watch the news. And that doesn't help because anxiety creeps in anyway. So it's better to do some little thing.
Yes, yes. That's why I said no. I think it's true of all of us. All of us think that everything is negative, but I think we can make a difference, each one of us, by doing small, simple things.
here,
Lovely,
here.
inspiring story, Vicky.
Thank you, Vicky. I'm I will say that I started fantasizing how she was going to write her own news or write her own stories. But I like where you took it because it is so, it's like democracy rises or stop sleeping. So, who shall I ask to unmute? Renu, do you want to tell a story tonight?
No, Linda, I just came to listen because
Oh,
today
good.
I didn't really prepare. I was
Okay.
out of town, so next time for sure. I didn't want to miss meeting all of you, so I just walked half my usual distance and came running back because I wanted to listen today. So
That's good to hear. And it was good to hear no echo. Um, Now remind me about Bobby or Joe about telling a story.
Yeah, I can tell.
Joe, do you have you timed your story?
Yeah, I can.
Do you know how long it is?
Just it's probably like 5 minutes.
Okay.
Can we see you or no?
All right, I'll turn on the camera. Yeah, it's
Joe, do you want to be recorded or do you not want to be recorded?
not this time.
Pardon?
Not this time.
All right.